MacVoicesTV is brought to you by PDF Pen for iPad from Smile, the mobile version of the award-winning Mac PDF editor. Use it to sign a contract, make corrections, fill out an application, make comments on a presentation, and much more. It's the mobile app that doesn't feel like you left the important features back at the office. This is part 2 of our visit with the Southern California Macintosh Owners Users Group. How about another iOS app? Another iOS app. Adam,
let's change gears entirely and go with what I was saying about how going web-based and iOS at the same time. There's a collaboration site called Trello, and if you do anything with other people, let me recommend Trello. It's free. It's really, really cool. It's astonishing what they figure out how to do in a web browser. And I'm mentioning this as my sort of iOS pick because they actually have an iOS app. It's iPhone only at the moment, so it gets big on the iPad. But they have an iPhone app that lets you kind of get to all your stuff. And so we use this very heavily for TidBITS and Take Control at this point, where for instance, we have an articles board. Now, let me explain Trello really briefly. Imagine you have a whiteboard on the wall. Now imagine you've drawn lines on it to make columns. So you have and Trello would call those lists. And then imagine you have Post-it notes, and you have a Post-it note, and you kind of put them down in the lists. And you can write on the Post-it notes. You can do all sorts of stuff on the Post-it notes. In Trello, that's it. Then you can pick up these Post-it notes and move them from list to list. So unlike so many of these collaboration tools where they want to force you into this process where first it will be first it will be an idea, and then it will be in progress, and then you've got to send it off to the right person and assign it, all this kind of stuff. Trello just sort of says, hey, the tools are here, use them however you want. And so sometimes we have lists that kind of march across the screen where you say, okay, here's an idea. I'm going to move my Post-it note into the next, into the in-progress list, and then I'm going to move it into the needs testing list or needs editing list, and then I'm going to move it into the done list. And everyone who's in the board, you're collaborating with, can see this happening, can get notifications of it happening, that kind of stuff. So it's a really great way for people to stay on the same page about this stuff. And what reason why I pull up the iOS app partly was an excuse to plug Trello because I love Trello. But a lot of what I like to be seeing from Trello is the notifications. I like to know that someone has posted a new article and it's going to need editing. Okay, that means I'll have to get to that, and I want to know that sooner rather than later. And so the iOS app gives you a full access to all the data, but it also will notify you of the changes appropriately. So I can just get a little buzz and go, oh yeah, Ogden wrote an article. Okay, good. Glad that's live. And so it keeps me in touch with what I'm doing and gets all its information from the web, but it brings it into a really nice iOS app. All of which is free.
Okay. So Trello is web-based, but
yes,
there's also an iOS app to access it.
And that's Trello.com. It's done by a company called Fog City Software, I think. I can remember what their second word is. And they're very highly regarded developers. And they started doing this for their own purposes, and then they opened it up, and they say, at some point we may add some premium features, but what you've got now will be free. And you can even, they do all of their development planning in Trello, in public boards, so you can go and watch. You can vote. You can do things like vote on features and leave comments on features. And I love being able to have a whole discussion in one of those little Post-it notes. Or when authors write articles now, they create a card in ideas, and then they move it to in progress when they're actually working on it. And then when they're ready for editing, they upload the file they've written as an attachment to the card, move the card to needs editing, and leave a comment for me so I know to go look at it. So it's all in one nice place, very, very tightly tied together, contextual, and it sends me email and notifies me on the phone so that wherever I am, I'll know that something has happened.
I'm going to check this out. This is very interesting.
And if you want to, if you go to the TidBITS site and search on Trello, you'll find a big long article about it. So if I haven't explained it well enough here, you can go read my article. But it's free. Just give it a try. Really nice app. I mean, they give examples of even things like having a dish to pass picnic, where you can have people like sign up in categories, and then and add different cards for different dishes they're going to bring, and so you know exactly what's going to show up at the end, that kind of thing. So very cool, all sorts of different uses, because it's not restrictive. It's more just a set of building blocks.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, that's one I didn't know, and somehow I must have missed the article in TidBITS. Or
how could you?
Didn't realize. Well, maybe I didn't realize just how great it was. So. Okay, so let's see. That was on the iOS side. So I'll do one on the iOS side. I don't know about you. I'm almost sick of the camera apps for the iOS. I mean, everybody just has filter after filter after filter. And I don't know. I'm not a photography genius. I would like my photo to look like what it was that I was shooting. It doesn't have to look like it was taken in 1975. It doesn't have to have red and blue highlights. I just would like to look nice. So I've been using more and more an app called 645 Pro, which is an app that, from a control standpoint, looks a little bit more like a classic DSLR, which is not the appeal to me, because if anything, I'm a point-and-shoot guy. What the appeal is for 645 Pro for me is, it doesn't save in just the JPEGs that pretty much every other camera app does, but it really goes and taps more of the actual power of the camera, does not go through the compression, and saves them out. And I keep forgetting this, as they're not RAW files, but they are a less or uncompressed TIFF file that you have the option. You can still save it as JPEGs, of course, if you like the control set. But what you end up with are larger files that have not gone through that compression, and theoretically, and at least have less artifacts or more of the richness of what you were actually shooting and what the iPhone camera is really capable of. I talked to a developer on MacVoices a few months ago, and just was really impressed with how much passion that he brought to the project. But again, instead of just having a new set of filters to choose from and that being the claim to fame, it looked like they had really gone in and done something different, and kind of lets me decide what I want to do with the photo in post. And God knows there are a million great post-production things that you can do with. But I like the no-filter approach. I like just the, okay, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to get, and it's going to be better quality than even what the built-in app gives you. So if you are really into this, or looking to get a little better quality out of your camera in your iPhone, 645 Pro is worth a look, in my opinion.
And I just noticed it's a whopping $2.99.
Oh yeah, how can you afford it?
It's amazing how low Apple has forced these prices to be by putting everyone right up next against each other. And so yeah, I mean, it looks like a great app. I mean, and I went over to Chrome and typed 645 PRO, and poof, gone right to the website. So it was a quick and easy thing. But yeah, it looks like a really neat app. I like the fact they simulate the little LCD display from an old camera,
which I never learned how to use on the old cameras, and I'm still learning how to use this. But at some point, you can just say, okay, auto everything. Just give me that big file that looks as good as it possibly can out of my iPhone. And that's, and I'm fascinated. In fact, I asked him, why hasn't anyone else done this? And he really didn't have a good answer. So for $2.99, it's worth it to maximize my photos. Adam, back to the Mac again.
Back to the Mac. Okay, well, let's go switch gears back to the utilities. This one probably people have heard of as well, and may have been one that Chuck uses as well, is Text Expander from Smile. And I have to admit, it took me a long time to really get in Text Expander. There have been utilities like Text Expander forever, where you type an abbreviation and it expands it to something longer. And the reason why it took me a long time to really kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this, is because I type pretty fast. So, there's that sense of, am I really saving that much time by, typing 3 characters or 5 characters instead of 15 characters? And, what I think finally got me was, frankly, typing take control titles over and over again. Because let me tell you, after you've typed take control of Spotlight for finding anything on your Mac, with quotes and proper capitalization, about 13 times you want to kill yourself. So that, and then there's just a few URLs that I send people regularly in email. How to get to your Take Control account, how to get to your TidBITS account, where to find the Take Control catalog, things like that. And so I've set up a couple of sort of techniques for typing, having TextExpander type those things for me. So, for instance, I can type, TC Spot to get the, Take Control of Spotlight for finding anything on your Mac title, or I can type TCAC to get the Take Control account URL. And so I don't use it really heavily. I'm not one of those people who's always looking for something I can shorten. I like classes of things. So common URLs that I type, Take Control titles that I type. But for just those things alone, I find it utterly invaluable, and really do recommend it for. You don't realize how often you type the same things over and over again. Something I've talked to Smile about, and I'd love to see them do, is actually have it watch what you type and make suggestions. Because I'm sure there's other things it could save me time doing that I just don't realize, oh yeah, I really typed that a whole lot. Wouldn't it be nice if it could save me some time?
Yeah, when Adam put this on his list, I was disappointed because I wanted to pick it. It's probably one of the three utilities I use more than anything. The examples I would use, if you go to the show notes on the website for this, you'll find in the show notes a little bio of Adam, since he was the guest here. And that's all a paragraph. Since Adam and I do these things fairly frequently, I don't want to have to type all of that. And I don't even want to have to open a file and copy and paste it. I just store it in TextExpander, and I think it's something like Adam bio X. Bang! It's there. Because Adam and I both use Gmail, and we'll get to that too. I think with MailPlane, Adam. I have signatures for the office. I have signatures for all the shows and everything. They're all stored in, so I don't have to worry about whether my program is supporting it or what account I'm sending from. I just know, okay, I'm signing this as at the office, so a 3-letter abbreviation, and my office signature goes in with, obviously the obligatory contact information and all. And I've done this with so many things. And Adam, that's a really interesting point, to get them to do suggestions, because the biggest trick in my mind to TextExpander is identifying those things.
Yeah. Where can you save me?
Yeah, not just your name and address, but the other things that you do over and over and over. But yeah, it's scary. And it has this cool little feature in there that it's watching you all the time, every time you use TextExpander. And so you can go in and check how much time you have saved at any given moment.
I was just looking at mine. It says I've saved 5.24 hours, which actually sort of sounds like a lot. But Keyboard Maestro has the exact same feature if you do About Keyboard Maestro, and it says I've saved around 756 hours. So I don't know. I mean, I've been using Keyboard Maestro a lot longer, but still, I wonder what Peter's algorithm is for figuring out how much time he saved me.
Yeah, and I mean it's sort of a gamification of an app, but it is fun. It doesn't do anything. It just gives you an idea of how much time you save. I think it also has characters, I believe, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually looking at it. It's kind of interesting. Apparently, what I do is either I use TextExpander a whole bunch during a day, or I don't use it at all. Because I'm doing typing these book titles and these URLs. Apparently, there's numerous days in a row when I simply don't need one, but then I do, I'm writing PR for a book, or we've got a new book coming out or something along those lines, and I will use it over and over and over again in that day. So I go, my graph is very spiky that way. But it's as I said, it's interesting because it tells you what you can do, and I think it really would be helpful for them to see ways that they could do more for you.
Hmm. Yeah, but and again, it's of course we're talking text, but you can also trigger Apple scripts with it. You can put in, if you're a coder of any kind, you can put in code snippets that you use over and over. There's just so many things here. You really need to spend just a touch of time read some of the documentation, read the website, and find out, because the more you learn about it, the more I think you'll find that you use it. And it doesn't just do a couple sentences. I mean, you could put probably 10 pages of text in if you want. I don't know what the upper limit is, but if you had a contract you were spitting out constantly that had a lot of boilerplate, just fill that in, and with 3 keystrokes, bang, you're there.
Well, and the big feature in TextExpander 4, which is relatively recent, is fill-in snippets. So you can actually have it, give you spaces to write in details. So you could actually have it, compose an entire contract with all of the things that change and the things that don't. Michael Cohen, who wrote our Take Control book about TextExpander, Take Control of TextExpander, he did as a joke, he did Apple's last earning calls as a snippet, where he, because Apple, in yet another record earnings call, Apple announced profits of $17.2 billion, and you just have to change the numbers and sometimes the superlatives, because so it doesn't read the same every time. So it's it feels like one of those Mad Libs from back in the day.
Okay, so TextExpander. I'm going to, for my Mac pick, I'm going to do another old one that has been around. I don't even know when it started, but I've been using it forever. The one thing that everybody uses, there's no way around using your Mac if you don't, is open and save dialog boxes. And while Apple has done a good job of improving it over the years, it still doesn't hold a candle, in my opinion, to what default folder does for you. Default folder lets you set favorites. It lets you. It watches the last few folders that you've opened or opened things from or saved to. It will allow you, for example, if you have your open dialog here, and you know that the window you have over here is where you want to save it, but you don't know how many levels deep in which folder it is, you can just reach over there, click it, and that's what suddenly appears in your open dialog. You're right there. Again, there's so many features here. It's got a little live preview of whatever it is that you're saving, or where you're saving it to, or opening, I should say. It's just a utility that I install, and I'm so happy that St. Clair Software keeps it up, because I use it constantly. It's always there. Adam, are you a default further?
I have gone back and I've used default folder, and I kind of go back and forth between using it, and actually you're talking about it reminds me I should probably try it again. I had some problem probably 8 months, a year ago at this point, when I was using it last, and someone said, oh, you should try, maybe that's default folder, you should disable it and see if the problem occurs. And it was not default folder's problem, but I did disable it and then didn't re-enable it. I used to be very, very fond of those sort of utilities. The granddaddy of them all was something called Boomerang. And then that morphed into Super Boomerang, and now utilities, and all of those kinds of things. And Apple did improve the open and save dialog boxes enough so that it's not as essential for me as it used to be. But partly that's because I know a lot of the tricks about the open and save dialog boxes too. So for instance, if you're saving a file, you can drag another file or folder into the view of the save dialog to move to that item in the Finder. So you can jump to a folder easily. You can click on something that's showing in the list to use its name. So you can then just edit the name. There's a lot of those kinds of tricks that have gotten better over the years, frankly, as Apple's taken features from things like default folder. But you talking about it reminds me that I should try reinstalling it, because I do like it, and I do find that that's one of those things where some apps are good about remembering, for instance, which folder you want to be in or where you were last, and other apps are not as good. So default folder takes over from that, and make sure you can are either in the folder you want to be or can get there quickly. The other reason why I think this makes a little bit less difference for me is because I do have 2 big monitors. It's very easy for me to get to the Finder and get to my I have a Finder window open in the lower left monitor at all times, and so it's really trivial for me to get there. That's actually another Keyboard Maestro macro that I wanted to mention, because I think this is actually kind of a mistake on Apple's part, that if you click on the desktop, if you have a Finder window open, but it's behind something else, behind Safari or Mail or whatever you're using, and you click on the desktop, you still can't see that Finder window, because Mac OS X layers windows, and just because an application comes to the front doesn't mean its windows do. And there's all sorts of arguments whether that's better or worse. Used to be that the application's windows always moved with it, so you could click on one and they'd all come forward. And they all interleave now in macOS 10, but I would argue the Finder is the one place where you don't want that behavior. Because if you are ever in the Finder, you know, you want to be able to see its windows. And so I have a Keyboard Maestro macro that says basically, when Finder activates, bring all open windows to front. And so I can click anywhere on the desktop and my two 24-inch monitors, and poof, my Finder window appears. So it's really easy for me to get to the Finder at all times. And just another one of those little productivity things that makes my Mac, you know, a lot faster to use for me than other Macs that are not set up in the same way.
Adam, I can't believe it. We're starting to head down the final stretch here, time-wise. I want to give the audience another chance to ask any questions or whatever before we maybe do some final picks. Folks, questions, comments?
Questions? It's a quiet bunch today.
Wow. Either we're doing a great job or they went to sleep. One of the two. I don't know which.
Okay, we're going to have to move fast in the next ones then.
Yeah. Pick wherever you want to go, since we are starting to run short on time.
Let's go back to iOS, and I'm going to do an app which I think people will like a lot, but does not require a ton of explanation. It's called Lumen, Lumin, and it is essentially a magnifying glass for your iPhone. And I don't use this app all the time, but man, when I'm rooting around in the furnace room trying to figure out what's going on, and it's dark and it's fine print on the back of something, I just pull out Lumen and sort of stuff it back in there, and it magnifies whatever the camera is looking at. You can tap the screen to lock it, in essence taking a photo, and then pull it back out and be able to see what you're looking at. So it's a total one-trick pony of an app, but if you ever do work where you're trying desperately to see something that's printed in what looks like 4-point type, and is it dark, that's Lumen is a big help that way. It can also turn on the camera's the flash, so it doesn't flash, but it just stays on as a light. And so again, for working with small stuff in the dark, it's absolutely useful.
Great pick. Great pick. Let's see, that's iOS. I'm going to jump back to the Mac and say BusyCal. If you like iCal, that's lovely, but BusyCal is so much better, in my opinion, for so many reasons. The handling of reminders, the handling of being able to snooze reminders, it works with the iCal database. So you're not sacrificing anything. If you ever need to go back, it works just fine in my experience with iCloud, syncing things back and forth with my iDevices. It's just a better calendar, no question about it. So if you're happy with iCal, great. If you have even the least little gripe with iCal, jump over to BusyCal, and I think you'll find that you really like it.
What he said, only louder.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
No, seriously, BusyCal. I don't know how people could like iCal. It's just so mind-bogglingly, stupidly designed in certain ways. And the calendar app doesn't really improve on it. So why is it you double-click an event to edit it, and it just shows, and then you have to click an edit button? Like, come on! What else would I want to do with it? I can already see it. I don't need to, see it in a different view. I just need to edit it, and yet you can't do that. BusyCal is so much faster, so much easier. Frankly, better looking. It doesn't pretend to be leather. I don't quite know why Apple decided that, this whole, ooh, it's a desk blotter. We all have those on our desks still, don't we? I mean, anyone who still has a desk blotter probably has it from the 80s and hasn't taken it off their desk yet. So, yeah, no, the only things that calendar, not so much, people using iCal would be underlying. What Calendar does better than BusyCal is deal with meetings if you do a lot of meetings. If you're a meeting organizer kind of person, Calendar is still a better app for that one particular purpose. But all of the rest of the stuff, BusyCal just does better. Better, smoother, faster, every imaginable way.
Agreed. Adam?
Okay, let's. I'm going to stick with the Mac, and I know we'll agree on this one then. Mailplane. Gmail, I really like Gmail. I'm an email-centric person. I really, really do a lot of email. And I have forever. I mean, I have probably literally millions of messages on my Mac from over all time. But in 2009, I was forced by the increasing instability to switch from Eudora to something else. Now, the obvious thing to switch to would have been Apple Mail, but I've never liked Apple Mail. And I've never really liked many of the other mail programs on the Mac, Entourage, Outlook, Claris Emailer, partly because I liked Eudora. And to my mind, they were all kind of bad clones of Eudora. They sort of looked like Eudora and worked like Eudora, but not quite. And so when it came time to say, you know, Eudora really has no more future, and it really doesn't, sorry for anyone who's using it, I looked and decided that what I liked about Gmail was that it was completely different in terms of mindset. That the Gmail programmers said, we are not going to make another bad clone of Eudora. We're going to make something from scratch that looks and thinks and works like Google does. And we all use Google for searching, and let's make mail work like that too. And so everything that Gmail does is centered around search. It's incredibly fast. It's incredibly flexible. And the one potentially quirky thing is that you have to be online. And people are like, oh, but I don't want to be online. Well, you know, I thought that too. But the fact of the matter is the only time when I'm not online and want to read email is on an airplane at this point. If I cannot do anything. I cannot do literally anything that comes into my email if I'm not online. I can't look stuff up in our website. I can't help people with problems. There's just nothing I can do. And so I've given up on the concept that I could work offline and gone to that. But there's a real problem with Gmail, which is that it's in your web browser. And remember how I said I had 70 tabs open in my web browser? Well, if I used my web browser for Gmail, there'd be another 30 or 40 of them that were all Gmail, because I would be opening one to look at Gmail and then forgetting about it and not closing it and going on to another one and so on and so on. Plus, I often work back and forth between the web and my email. So my email always sits on the right monitor. The web browser always sits on the left monitor right next to it. And so I use this program called MailPlane, which is basically this sort of custom version of Safari that is totally tweaked to make working with Gmail easier. And so it's just a web browser, really. So all you're using is the Gmail web browsing client, but you get all these extra features like being able to, you know, take and attach screenshots directly from within the app. You can use both Macintosh keyboard shortcuts or the Gmail shortcuts, whichever you prefer. You can drag attach documents into a mail message to attach. All that kind of stuff that you expect from a Mac program, you can now do with this web-based email, thanks to MailPlane.
I agree, 100% across the board. I still occasionally have a good reason to access my mail within a web browser, but it just kind of feels clunky compared to when I'm running MailPlane. So, and the great thing about MailPlane with Gmail, of course, in the newest versions of MailPlane, is if you have multiple Gmail accounts, it will handle those. So there's none of this logging in, kind of what I said about the identities.
Yes.
Logging in is one identity, logging in is another identity. You know, I can have them all in MailPlane if I want, and it just streamlines email handling so much.
Right. There's just a sidebar, an account sidebar, and you just click, and boom, you're in the next one. Boom, you're in the next one. You know, it's really, really fast and easy. So. Yeah. Okay.
I'll jump on the Mac side. We already talked about text. Oh, there's a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding Gmail, because I stopped using it, so I've lost my passwords, and I wonder if you guys know of any utility to help me go back and retrieve that, so I don't have to start from scratch and have an old one, you know, kind of somewhere in the ether.
So you've lost your password to Gmail?
Yes. Yes, I never wrote it down, or I lost it. So now I'd like to retrieve the original one, if I could.
You should be able to retrieve a Gmail password if you just go to the main website where it wants you to log in and say forgot password.
Simple as that.
So the only concern, and this is something we actually talk about a little bit in that TidBITS Presents video, is that, you know, how you set up Gmail way back when to give you that password is a bit of a question. So, you know, I mean, obviously you need another email address for it to send the new password to. And I don't know what that might be.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I haven't used it much. I'd like to use the Google Calendar to interface with someone else. So I really need like a tutorial on how best to use the whole system. Maybe there's something I can go to that would give me that.
That's a good question.
How it works and the best way to use it.
Yeah, Google is actually a little funny this way. We've never written a book about Google products because they're web-based, they change so quickly, but in relatively small ways. So it's not like one of those things where you can say, oh, okay, we're at version 2, let's do a new book. It would be more like, we've added 3 features this week. Oh, well, look, and there's another one next month, and another one the next month. And so it becomes very difficult to keep up to date with what they're doing. The one thing that's important to remember about Google, and this is something that's changed over the years, is that you now have one Google account. So that Google account can hold Google Calendar, Google Sites, Google Gmail, Google Plus, everything. And so it would actually be useful probably to try to get that one that you've already created, get that reset up properly so that you don't have to create a new one. So then there's 2 sort of personalities that you have out there. Google and Apple both have this problem where once you have multiple accounts, you can't merge them. So if you have multiple Apple IDs, for instance, you're stuck with them. I don't know why they do this, but they do. And Google has exactly the same problem where once you've got 2 Google accounts, for instance, I have adamengst@gmail.com, and my main one is actually acengst@gmail.com. That connects to my ace@tidbits.com address. And I had to do that for various technical reasons back at the time, and now I'm stuck with these 2 accounts, and I can't possibly merge them in any way, so I have to be careful not to use the old one. So, but you should be able to get it back in some way, and if nothing else, it'd be interesting. If you can't do it via email, contact Google, see what they can do for you. I mean, let's find out just whether these companies are going to stand up to their customer support responsibilities.
Yeah, Adam, I'm trying to remember when there was a shift, but once you're logged into Google as don't you have access to everything, or was there a time that logging into Google was separate from logging into Gmail?
Oh, at one time it was very separate, and that wasn't that long ago, like 5 years ago. So
I can't remember 5 minutes ago. So
yeah. So it's all merged now, and they're trying to do so more and more. But that was something that really is pretty recent. And I said that was why back in the day I had to give up on my adamengst@gmail.com account because I couldn't do the appropriate linking. I had gotten basically. I remember what it was. I had the adamengst@gmail account, and then I had all my Google Analytics and stuff like that use my ace@tidbits.com email. And because the ace@tidbits.com email was its own Google account, it couldn't take over that other Gmail account. They were 2 accounts by that point, and there was no merging to be done. So, but yeah, make them give your password back, and you should be able to get back into it. And as I find Gmail to be one of the better of the email services. We just had a problem. No TidBITS subscribers who use iCloud got their TidBITS issues for the last 3 weeks because iCloud has been eating them for the last 3 weeks. And I finally managed to get in touch with someone at Apple, and they said, we think it's fixed now. So great. Hopefully that'll be working. But we don't like to hear that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
question.
Apple has solved the problem of old accounts because it cancels your password if you don't log on within 90 days. I consider that intolerable, so I start my Apple password with the word intolerable.
I haven't heard that. They cancel your password?
Yes, I've run across that several times. They come up with a boilerplate message saying that we canceled the password because you didn't log on within 90 days.
Oh.
Yeah, Apple's getting much more serious. I haven't seen that, but I have 3 Apple IDs, and I actually use them all. And so I have not run into a case where I've had an old one that doesn't get used. But I would not be surprised because they've started to get much more serious about security to the point where if you go into an Apple ID to change the password, they now force you to have an uppercase letter, a number, and they do not allow you to repeat characters more than 3 times. And plus the security questions that they forced everyone to start adding back in April when you went to the iTunes store. A tip with security questions, don't answer them. At least, no, just lie. Because the problem with the security questions is, 1, they're ambiguous, and 2, the ones that aren't ambiguous are usually fairly easily determined by bad guys. So, your mother's maiden name, I mean, come on, for anyone on Facebook, how hard is that to figure out? You just go see who all the relatives are who have different names. So, none of this stuff is really secure. And so what security professionals are recommending now for those questions is you come up with a short phrase that you will remember. So don't make it one of those funky passwords that you can't remember, with, asterisks and bang signs and numbers and all that. Make it a phrase, the classic one from the XKCD comic, which Chuck will link to because it's great, is correct horse battery staples. A really silly set of common words, but, pick something you'll remember and use that same thing for every security question. What's your mother's maiden name? Monkey brains. Who was your best friend in high school? Monkey brains. It doesn't matter. Just something that you'll remember and you can tell someone on the phone because you don't know when you'll be asked this. It might be an email, it might be on the phone, or on a website, it might be on the phone. I wouldn't answer them an email if anyone ever asked you that. Don't do that. So.
Adam, I think we're out of time. I'll ask the crowd one more time. Any questions, comments?
We have one more question.
Yep, give you the last word, sir.
What do you think is the best way to search for and find and become aware of new apps for iPhone, iPad?
Oh.
Core is really poor, and I'm just wondering if there's a better way.
I guess, honestly, I don't much search for new apps. And the reason is because there are so many new apps at all times. It's a fire hose. And so, if anything, I'm trying to, prevent myself from getting hammered by them all the time. I mean, I probably receive, 10 to 50 press releases a day about new iOS apps. And so it's just insane. What I tend to do more than anything else is pay attention to where I see other people talking about something. So if I'm on Twitter and someone says, hey, I just got this cool new app, I'm more likely to go check it out because someone recommended it. Or if I decide, for instance, I want an app to, so I can record what kind of wine I've been drinking and I might want to get again. I'll do some searching, I'll do some research at that moment and see what I can find. But I don't really do, I don't sort of say, boy, I wonder if there's any cool new apps today, and just sort of look in general. And I do not go to the App Store and see what Apple is featuring because, I don't know what Apple's agendas are, but I don't, it's certainly not something where, you can necessarily predict why they're featuring something.
Yeah, I would second all that. I've kind of found that I let the apps come to me. If there's something really good, I will hear about it from the people that have, frankly, more time than I do or more information to look at every single app that comes out. So if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, and you're following any of the Mac people, they'll be the ones to tell you, hey, this is a really great app. I'm trying this out. I'm checking it. I really like it. So, yeah, you can waste a lot of time because there's just so much stuff out there, and not all of it is good.
Oh, and a lot of it isn't. And even sometimes when you do go looking for something specific, like I wanted a Craigslist app a while back, and I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out, which Craigslist app to get. Finally bought one and then was actually truly annoyed when it turned out that, they had like 5 different versions, and I had, in fact, bought the wrong one. Because they all had slightly different names and it wasn't clear which one was which, and as I said, it was frustrating. So yeah, and the other thing you might do is this requires sort of appropriate set of followers and whatnot. But sometimes you can just ask on Twitter, hey, anyone got a recommendation for such and such app, and and see what people say, because that's often where you'll find out what other people have got. There's also certain people. I don't know his name offhand. Steve Omug, Chuck. You know his last name is?
Oh, great! Thanks.
He's from the Portland Mac user group. But in any event, he seems to check out all sorts of apps and is constantly sending email with, "Hey, I saw this great new app." So clearly there's also people out there who really do get a kick out of doing this, and if you can find them, they might be a good source for that information.
Agreed.
One last question?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Time? Devin?
Sure.
I'm just curious what systems both of you use. Like, are you on a laptop or on an old, a big CPU with all the work you do? I'm just curious. I know you got 2 monitors, Adam.
Yes. I'm running on a 2008 Mac Pro. It should have 10 gig of RAM in it, but I've actually been having some DIMM problems, so I'm down to 6 gig. I believe in lots of RAM. Put an SSD in it. I absolutely adore SSDs. I strongly encourage anyone who's looking for more performance to get an SSD as basically the first thing after getting past 2 gig of RAM. I mean, you should have at least 4 gig of RAM if you possibly can. And the 2 monitors are actually they're Dell 24s. I'm not very fond of them, but they were a whole lot cheaper than Apple 24s back in the day when I bought them. And basically, I got 2 monitors for the price of one Apple one, and I slightly regret it because they do things like turn off sporadically, you know, for a second, then come back on, and one of them has a line down the side until it warms up. I mean, the quality is pretty weak, frankly, but you know, they were cheap. And they're actually much more ergonomic than Apple's monitors. Apple's monitors are not adjustable. These, I can slide them up and down and turn them and rotate and all sorts of good stuff like that, which, frankly, I think Apple could do a much better job on. My laptop is a new 13-inch MacBook Air, which I just got very recently. I've been working on a 13-inch unibody aluminum MacBook, so a very old laptop. And it had gotten weird and slow, you know. And there's a certain point at which I say, you know, I use laptops to give presentations, and if they're going to be weird and slow, that's the worst possible time. So that was, I just got the new MacBook Air, which I think is just gorgeous and really, really nice. I like the 13 more than the 11 because it's a little bit easier for me to see, and my hands are a little big for that. iPhone 5, just got the iPhone 5. Like it more than the iPhone 4, but not radically so. You know, it's nice, it's great, don't get me wrong. There's nothing I don't really like about it other than the stupid part about putting the headphone jack on the bottom. What were they thinking? But the fact is that the iPhone is magic, and you know, the iPhone 5 is not significantly more magic than the 4S or the 4. So that's great. I have an iPad 3, but you know, don't much use it. Tanya's taking it over to write her iPad book, so I'm not doing much on the iPad at all these days.
And on my side, I have my primary machine is a 15-inch MacBook Pro Retina. I do have a 17-inch, which was my former primary machine, sitting right over there. This is a recording machine today. I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro as well, and an iMac that is now so old that there's just no point in me selling it because I can't get anything for it. So I actually use that mainly to have another screen on my desk that I can watch videos on while I'm working. iPhone 5, and Adam's right. You know, the level of magic is not huge above the iPhone 4S, but it is there. The camera is definitely better with all the coolness there, and an iPad 3. The iDevices go with me everywhere that the Retina doesn't, and the Retina pretty much goes with me everywhere. So at any given moment, I have 3 screens. People on airplanes love me because, you know, Adam has 2 screens on his desktop. I have at least 2 screens on the airplane. You know, the laptop and the iPad over here, and maybe doing something on the phone as well. So
isn't it great that the laptops have gotten so much lighter, Chuck, so we can now carry so much more around?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, SMOG, this has been fun. Thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Adam and Devin, that's super. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Devin. Appreciate it.
Have a good afternoon.
Yep, Adam, we'll do it again soon.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Bye.
Folks, Mac Notables is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. Hopefully, we will be coming to a Macintosh user group near you soon. Until the next time, thanks for listening. Mac Voices TV is part of the Mac Voices Group at MacVoicesGroup.com. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.